And happy Saturday, everybody. Welcome to a brand new edition of the True Blue Podcast, the official Blue Bombers podcast here on gshow Productions, brought to you by Mid-Canada Fasteners and Tools. Visit your locations of their stores, or their locations of their stores in Brandon and Winnipeg today, your one-stop shop for all your industrial needs. Visit their website, too, at midcanadafasteners.shop for more details on the products that they sell. But for those of you that do visit in store, we got a promo code for you guys. You'll get a deal off of tools, 5% off, as well as 10% off all accessories and hardware when you use BombersPod, that promo code, when you visit one of their store locations in Brandon and Winnipeg. So take advantage to that. We'll have another promo code for you guys starting next month, as October is almost coming to an end. It's crazy to think about. But yeah, we're also brought to you by Terraco, serving Manitoba producers for over 80 years. Be sure to visit their website at Terraco.ca for more information on their great products. And of course, we're brought to you by Goaltenders, your goalie's personal review service, video review service by Gordy Tummelson. Visit his website at GordyTummelsonGoalies.ca to learn more about the great service that he puts on. A goaltending service that can be done through Zoom and still go over all the same things as you would in person. So pretty cool stuff there, and pretty awesome that the Bombers are once again going to be hosting the West Final. Of course, that was determined last week, but the Bombers finishing their season strong with two wins, two decisive wins at that. I'm going to talk about the Bombers' win yesterday in their regular season finale against the Calgary Stampeders. Also going to be talking about the Bombers heading into the playoffs, where I think this team stacks up against the rest of the field in the playoffs, as well as talking about Brady Oliveira being named Bombers MOP and more here on Episode 6 of the True Blue Podcast on gshow Productions. I'll be back to start things off here for the first thing to talk about, the Bombers' win yesterday in Calgary after this transition. Right, well, the Bombers, they finished their season off with a 14-4 record after winning yesterday against the Calgary Stampeders, 36-13. The Bombers opened things up with a 6-0 lead after the first quarter. There were a lot of field goals in this game, but the Bombers started finding the end zone as things went along. They put up 17 points in the fourth quarter to make it 36-13. The final, taking a look at the player stats. Drew Brown, pretty good game, man. 13 for 17, 278 yards passing, 2 TDs, no interceptions, so taking care of the football. Brady Oliveira was able to reach 1,500 rushing yards yesterday in the game. 8 carries for 36 yards was good enough for him to get it done there. In terms of the receiving core, big shout out to Nick Dembski, who doesn't have him on here in terms of his receiving on the CFL website, but he's also a 1,000-yard receiver this season. So, yeah, some milestones reached yesterday with Oliveira rushing it, the Bombers playing an overall solid game. I mean, when you take a look at what Calgary was able to do on offense, Jake Maier wasn't able to do much. 6 for 15, only 110 yards. Yes, 1 touchdown, 0 interceptions, but this Bombers team really locking things up. They had a bit more trouble against the run. Dedrick Mills with 8 carries for 88 yards. That's 11 yards per carry, but Bombers limiting the points yesterday against the Calgary Stampeders and winning decisively, even though they didn't play many of their starters at all. The Bombers' leading receiver yesterday was Drew Wolotarski and Rasheed Bailey. Kenny Lawler played some snaps too, but not all the starters played the full game. Zach Collaros getting the night off, and I think this is kind of what we were going to see with this Bombers team in this final game of the year, resting some significant guys because you got first locked up and not much to play for, honestly, at this point in the season for the Blue and Gold, except for getting that 14th win, which they did, finishing first place in the West once again this season in the CFL, and they'll await the winner of the BC Lions and the Calgary Stampeders, which will be playing against each other next week to see who comes to IG Field in that West semifinal to move on to the West final. But yeah, in terms of, the two matchups that the Bombers could potentially have, you could either be playing against BC or maybe Calgary goes and upsets the BC Lions next weekend is the team playing in Winnipeg. But I gotta say, in terms of who I'd rather see the Bombers play, I think any team can be dangerous come playoff time, but I'd rather see the Bombers play against the Calgary Stampeders for a few reasons. As good as Jake Maier has been down the line, Vernon Adams Jr. brings another level in terms of the things a QB can do. They got probably outside of the Bombers the most complete receiving core in the league. They got a defense that can get pressure on the QB as well in terms of Betts doing what he's been able to do this season, most notably on that BC Lions team. And it's a team that played the Bombers very close in the last game that they played each other of the season. I believe it was in week 18 now, is somewhere around that a few weeks ago. And BC had the Bombers on the ropes. The Bombers were able to come back and fortunately win it in OT. But I feel like in terms of the weapons BC has, they match up better to this Bombers team than a Calgary team would. I think defensively, this BC Lions D has proven that they can get turnovers and get to the QB. I just feel like the second best team in the West in the BC Lions, with the weapons that they have, what they've been able to do this season too, even though they ended up finishing the season 12-6 compared to what the Bombers are at 14-4. This is a BC team that's going to play this Bombers team tight, and a team that could potentially expose this Bombers team on deep shots if the Bombers aren't exactly sound in their coverage in terms of what they want to do out there with their schemes. So yeah, I think that Calgary, it's a team that would come in spirited to Winnipeg, coming off of a huge win which they would need to get against BC. But for my money, I'd rather play the Stampeders, knowing the skill level of team that BC has. There are different ways that they can beat you. We saw it in the first matchup of the season, even though a lot's changed from there, but they were getting a ton of pressure on Zach Collaros. They were executing on offense. That's a team that I don't think the Bombers want to run into next Saturday, or 2 Saturdays from now in the West Final on November 11th, which is Remembrance Day. I think that no matter who it is, though, the Bombers are going to come ready to play. I think that feeding off the home crowd is going to be huge for this team in their matchup that they're going to have. But yeah, in terms of MOP, the nomination there, Brady Oliveira from the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, I think it's so well deserved from Brady Oliveira. This is a guy that has been the backbone of this Bombers offense so far this year. In every game that he's played, especially down the stretch, he's been the one positive in this Bombers offense. And yeah, the Bombers have been able to get that pass game going all season long in games, but there's been a lot of times where Zach Collaros hasn't exactly looked like the usual dominant self that he's grown accustomed, well, the fans have grown accustomed to seeing this during his time in Winnipeg. I just don't think he's been at his highest level this year, even though he's been among one of the top QBs in the league once again in terms of the stats. There's just been some questionable turnovers from Zach Collaros, some questionable decisions, whereas for Brady Oliveira, yes, he's put the ball on the ground, but he's been able to get this offense back going again. He's been able to establish the momentum for this offense with the powerful runs that he's had. I mean, the guy has finished his season, taking a look at the stats here. with the most rushing yards out of any RB, tied for the most in rushing touchdowns, and he's also proven that he can be a safety blanket and proven his versatility in this passing game for this Bombers team. I think some big moments for Oliveira too was in that Toronto Argonauts game where he was the steady line of production on this Bombers offense, even though the Bombers were struggling to put up some points as the game went along. They started to put up more against Toronto back in that Week 17 matchup, but it was Brady Oliveira who was finding the seams and busting open for first downs to keep things going for the Bombers. In that game against BC, when the Bombers were down 10, the Bombers barely gave Oliveira the ball until the last quarter. Once he started getting his touches elevated, great things were happening, and he finished the game with over 150 all-purpose yards on 15 touches. What he's been able to do with the ball this season has been explosive. In a offense as loaded as the Bombers' offense is, this has been a guy that's been the lead back in an offense that seems like they've been able to run the ball more this year, and that's been because of the development of Brady Oliveira. All these things going into, this Bombers team having the most points for in the league out of any team. Brady Oliveira has been a huge part of that, no matter if he's getting in the end zone or rushing for the yards he's rushed for, or even getting it done in the passing game. He's been more beneficial to this Bombers offense this season than Zach Collaros is, and Collaros is going to have to be beneficial for this Bombers offense if they're going to win a Grey Cup, right? You need your QB to play at a high level, but Brady Oliveira has been the difference for this Bombers team all year long. He's been consistently good. He's gotten better as the seasons went along, and for the best offense in the league, for him to get this nomination, I think it's well-deserved, since he's been the best player on this offensive unit this season for the blue and gold. But yeah, Bombers, in terms of their outlook heading into this year's playoffs, I'll be back with that coming up after this next transition here on another short edition of the True Blue podcast, brought to you by Mid-Canada Fasteners and Tools, Terraco, and Goaltenders. And remember, with Mid-Canada Fasteners and Tools, be sure to use Bombers Pod in their store locations in Brandon and Winnipeg until the end of October to get 5% off all tools and 10% off all accessories and hardware supplies when using the Bombers Pod promo code in Brandon and Winnipeg for Mid-Canada Fasteners and Tools. But we'll be back after this next transition. See you in a moment, folks. Welcome back to the True Blue podcast, brought to you by Mid-Canada Fasteners and Tools, Terraco, as well as Goaltenders. Next week is going to be a really fun show, as the Bombers may not be playing. We got a great guest that's going to be joining. It's Derek Taylor, the play-by-play commentator for the Bombers on CJOB, or 680 CJOB, that is, on the AM radio, official partner of the Bombers as their broadcaster. Going to be fun to ask him a lot in terms of what that transition has been into taking over for a CFL commentating legend in Bob Irving, getting his thoughts on the Bombers season, how it's gone, and taking a look at them heading into the playoffs. That's going to be a lot of fun to do next week. Might also have some other guests joining that one, so stay tuned on our social media pages for updates on that, as well as on our website on the upcoming events tab. where we will be posting the guest list there as well, and all the details for next week's episode. But yeah, welcome back to the show, everybody. Talked about the Bombers, their win yesterday against the Calgary Stampeders. Also talking about Brady Oliveira getting the MOP nomination for the Bombers, and as well as talking about who I'd rather see the Bombers play in the upcoming West Final. Leave your thoughts down below who you'd like to see the Bombers play. If there's anybody in particular out of BC and Calgary, would love to hear from you guys, your explanation on it. But yeah, I guess I should get into this beforehand, since it's been such a heavy topic here in Winnipeg as of late in terms of the attendance numbers between them, the Winnipeg Jets, and fans more so selling out Bomber games, as the Bombers have been on a sellout streak. I believe it's been like 4 straight games they've sold out, including that Edmonton game that they played in the regular season home finale for the squad in Week 20. But yeah, going to a Bomber game, I haven't been to much. As much as I'd like to. I've been to, like, on an average of maybe 1 in the past 3 seasons. I'd like to get there more because the atmosphere there, it's just night and day compared to when you go to a Jets game right now. I feel like when you go to a Winnipeg Jets game, you get there, you walk around, you get to your seats, the staff is really nice in greeting you, but just the energy before the games, it just doesn't feel like it's there. They got some stuff going on in terms of their announcers pumping fans up. They got like their dancing team dancing too for pregame entertainment, but that compared to going to a Bomber game where there's tailgating happening, where it seems like there's events that fans can interact with beforehand and compete in different things, different activities for fans to do, music playing, that seems like the variety changes a lot. I mean, just even going back to getting there before the game, taking a fan bus and being able to bond with the fans in that way. It's just an experience right now at the Bombers games that I don't think fans are really getting when they go to Winnipeg Jets games. And, it also helps when this Bombers team has built itself into the type of contender that they are. Winnipeg hasn't really been able to elevate in that status in terms of the NHL, in terms of getting their team farther. So it could be that, in terms of ticket prices to watch a Bomber game off Ticketmaster, they're just cheaper than if you're going to go to a Winnipeg Jets game to purchase. But at the end of the day, the in-game experience is just way different. It's more lively inside IG Field, and it seems like they've just really been able to capture a high spirit level of fans that are happy to be at the games. Now, there's a lot of Bombers fans that end up going to the Rum Hut and just chilling by there in terms of throughout the game, and maybe that helps. But the Jets have that too. I think, honestly, it is the in-game experience and maybe tickets being a bit cheaper that draws fans more into Winnipeg Bombers games. And I think that it's just the activities that they have, the different things for fans to do, seems like it kind of outnumbers the things you get in terms of that at a Winnipeg Jets game. I think that the Bombers have been doing it right. They've built a culture where, they're able to interact with their fans while they're able to get more fans into the game. And I think that's because of just what this team has built, what they've been doing to get to the direction they've gone down, which is, 3 straight Grey Cup appearances heading into this season. And yeah, it just seems like things are a bit more fun at a Bombers game in terms of what you can do there when things aren't going on the field compared to when you're at a Winnipeg Jets game. But that's my take on that. Could be completely wrong, and it could be something completely different. But yeah, let me know what you guys think of that, what your thoughts are in the comments down below of this episode. But the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, for their success this season, they go 14-4, the number 1 team in the West again, heading into the playoffs. And I just think this season was just such a testament to how good this Bombers team is overall. If this team was struggling on offense, the defense would pick things up. Earlier on in the season, when the defense wasn't as successful in getting their stops, the offense was coming through. Even the special teams got better in the last few weeks. Having Janarian Grant back for that definitely helps. But yeah, outside of the Toronto Argonauts, I'd say that there's really no team that's as complete as this Winnipeg Blue Bombers team. And yeah, I think that BC could challenge in the West Final if they were to make it against the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. But, I think that Winnipeg in that game against BC proved throughout that they just had a bit more overall to take them down. And if you take a look at the Winnipeg Blue Bombers this season, they don't have the most points for in the league. I was wrong on that. But they do have the most points for in the West by quite a bit. BC is second in that category with 495. Bombers are at 558. I've heard a lot of complaints about the Bombers this season in terms of their lax defense and all that stuff, but it's a bend but don't break defense, a defense that is very good in their tackles, and a defense that can also turn it up and tighten things up a bit. I mean, there's a reason why this team has only allowed 364 points against this season, which is the least given up in the CFL. It's because they got a mix of guys that can create well off of the defensive line in Jackson Jeffcoat and Willie Jefferson, reliable tacklers still in guys like Adam Bighill in that linebacking core, and some cornerbacks that have proven that they can make some good tackles this season as well, in guys like Demario Houston. I think that for this Bombers team, their big Achilles heel has been throughout these past 2 years is the special teams, but Castillo has come in. He's been pretty consistent in terms of knocking down field goals. Janarian Grant being back for this return game is huge and gives the Bombers another level, which they didn't have when he was out of the lineup. And, I think that the big thing that has been a weakness for this team is just covering when things don't go exactly right and you end up missing a field goal, which we've seen this year, or a point after attempt. Outside of that, though, this Bombers team, like I said, just such a complete team, have proven they can win with the defense, they can win with the offenses. Shaky as Zach Collaros' play has been this season, he's been able to, also show out in games and show glimpses of why he is the guy that's been named back-to-back MOPs in the CFL, which he won't be getting that this year. But the Bombers have fantastic weapons outside of Collaros for him to throw to. Brady Oliveira has been this team's MOP this season and has given the Bombers another dimension on offense in terms of a threat. In terms of running the ball, it was good last year, but wasn't at the level we saw with Andrew Harris. Seems like that's returned for the blue and gold. Everything, seems to be lining up right for Winnipeg to go out and make it to another Grey Cup. I think as long as you go into that game at IG Field on November 11th against the BC Lions and the Calgary Stampeders, no matter who it is, as long as you get prepared, don't get behind in the score, you're able to thrive off of that crowd noise and feed into it and stay disciplined in terms of how you play, in terms of taking care of the ball and managing your penalties, which the Bombers have been very good at this season. I don't see any way really how this Bombers team can't get back to the Grey Cup if they're able to do those things. I still think Collaros is a better QB than Vernon Adams Jr., as well as Jake Mayer. I think that the Bombers have the best run game in the CFL. They've proven that this season. Even in short game, it's almost automatic that this team is able to get first downs, and if this defense is able to put the pressure on the QBs in terms of batting balls down and being disruptive the way guys like Jefferson and Jeffcoat have been able to do this season, I do really like the Winnipeg Blue Bombers' chances to go to another Grey Cup. The only way I see them losing is if they get away from their game of discipline, if they come out with a slow start, because it's been tough for this team to elevate their game throughout the quarters on offense this season when they haven't exactly gotten off to the fastest start. But if you're able to keep the ball moving, convert on second downs, the offense should be fine. If you don't put the ball in stupid places and make stupid mistakes, you should be fine as well. And I just feel like this defense is going to come ready to play for this Winnipeg Blue Bombers team, and I think that this team could have a lot of success and could very well be Grey Cup champions again. They got some tough tests in front of them, like if BC were to come to town, as well as a team in Toronto if they were to meet up with them in the Grey Cup if they make it. But the Bombers have all the pieces. It's just time for them to put it together in a redemption season for this team, where they are looking to get back to the Grey Cup and not lose it this time, but rather win it. But yeah, that's my thoughts on the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. What I think they have to go out and do to win in these playoffs this year. Leave your thoughts down below. Who you think is going to be the most important player for the Bombers to have success, and how you think they fare come playoff time. And I guess I can answer that. I think their most important player in playoffs is going to be Zach Collaros. I think that if you're able to have the best QB on the field, you should be able to win. And Zach Collaros gives the Bombers high chances to win, even though he is not the MOP nominee of this team. That's Brady Oliveira still. Zach Collaros has to build off of the success that Brady Oliveira has given this team on offense if he does continue to do so in the playoffs, and he needs to focus on managing the football and also taking the shots when those shots are open. You don't want to see Zach Collaros go completely away from his game, which makes him so good, is taking those deep shots and rolling out of the pocket, but you can still roll out and check down or even throw it out of bounds and not turn this football over to hurt this Winnipeg Blue Bombers team. Because, look, in that game against BC, he was turning the ball over, but the Bombers were able to find a way to win. Playoffs, things tighten up, and those mistakes become way more crucial. Sure, you're probably going to be able to rely on your defense to get it done, or the weapons around you to step things up in Brady Oliveira. But it starts with Zach Collaros and him maintaining good control of football, taking good care of it, and also capitalizing on his opportunities. I think if Zach Collaros comes out and plays the way we know he can in terms of playing at a high level, and this Bombers team is right from the get-go in that game in BC, I don't see any way how even BC is going to be able to compete with this Blue Bombers team. They're going to need to scheme something up to get Zach Collaros uncomfortable and to make him make those turnovers, because if he's able to leave the door open, if this Bombers team is able to leave the door open with turnovers, then BC, that's when they'll have their best chance to win, or even a team in the Calgary Stampeders. But yeah, that's going to do it for this edition of the True Blue podcast. I'll take one last transition and I'll be back for some final words here on episode 6. Well, you made it to the end of this edition of the True Blue podcast for episode 6. I've been your host, Graeme, the G Show Forsyth. Thank you to you, the viewer, for tuning in to this one and watching another edition of our Winnipeg Blue Bombers podcast. Be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any future episodes like this. Next episode is going to be coming out on Friday next week. Ahead of the Bombers game that's going to be played the week after in the West Final. I'm going to have Derek Taylor on the show, probably, voice of the Blue Bombers on CJOB, being their play-by-play commentator. Going to be fun to get to know him, his path to becoming the announcer of the Bombers to where he was at before, also getting his thoughts on this Bombers team and previewing them heading into that West Final. But yeah, special thanks to Mid-Canada Fasteners and Tools, Terraco, and Goaltenders for sponsoring this edition of the show. Mid-Canada Fasteners and Tools, of course, I'll mention it one more time, but use BombersPod, a promo code, until the end of October to get 5% off all tools or 10% off all accessories and hardware when visiting Mid-Canada Fasteners and Tools in their stores in either Winnipeg or in their Brandon location. Yeah, excited that this Bombers team is one step closer to being back into the Grey Cup. Kind of sad that the CFL season is coming to an end today in terms of the regular season, but should be a fantastic playoffs. You guys enjoy those fantastic playoffs next week. I'll catch you guys before then. I've been your host, Graeme, the G Show Forsyth, giving you the salute, peacing out, and saying so long on this Saturday, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your night. Stay safe out there. And until next Friday, or this week on Friday, coming up in the evening, we'll be back for having some more great guests here on the show, or having some great guests here on the True Blue podcast, as well as maybe even tailgating. You'll have to wait to find out on the details. That will be coming out on our social media for that next week. But yeah, take care, everybody. Have a wonderful rest of your weekend, and happy Halloween as well.